driving this weekend. Welcome to the program. What is absolutely a gorgeous Monday afternoon. Jay Thomas Show.
I'm looking for Suki Jones, you crazy horse saloon.
As always, we're here for you to get the information out you need as we all go through this thing together. And as always, you have access to the program. Anything we're talking about, you are more than welcome to pick up the phone and comment. Also, same goes for any guests that we have on, and we've been doing that a lot the last couple weeks. And we will again this week as well. 293-9000, toll-free, 1-888-970-9329. Email is talk@wday.com. Know that you can come to this program right here, and we're going to get you the most accurate and up-to-date information as possible on stuff that's actually affecting your life when it comes to this coronavirus. Coming up at 2:35 this afternoon, Sarah Artenson, she's spokeswoman for North Dakota Job Service. She's going to join us. If you have questions, she'll take your phone calls. I've been receiving a lot of emails and messages from listeners not understanding some of the aspects of unemployment in these crazy times, so she will be here. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is going to join us at 3:05. I guess in Minnesota, you folks over there, you got a problem with a lot of people price gouging, and the Attorney General's had it. He's putting his foot down, so he's going to join us. Darrell Lee's president of North Dakota Farm Bureau at 3:35 this afternoon. We really haven't talked too much on the effect this is going to have on farmers and ranchers. Doug Burgum does a presser every day at like 4 o'clock, a little bit after 4. We're going to start taking those. We won't take the whole thing. We're not going to take the questions and all that. We're just going to take it up to where he's giving out the latest information, and it seems to be changing daily. He's going to join us. And there's something really cool coming up for truck drivers. You truck drivers out there that are keeping America rolling. Coming up Wednesday, just outside of Fargo and I-94, there's an event going on put on by the Transportation Club of Fargo-Moorhead. And President Mark Walters is going to join us at 4:40 this afternoon. So some of the stuff we got, and we'll try to also weave in some topics. I don't know if we'll have time. This show basically now is just turning and getting you folks the information you need. Rob, that's what you're doing right now too, man.
Well, I think that's what it comes down to, and also talking about some of this stuff. People keep telling me, I keep getting the thing where people say that they don't want to speak out, like they think, hey, maybe this policy goes too far, and they're a little bit afraid of speaking out because they don't want people to think it's like, I'm taking the virus seriously, but is this and the thing is, this is absolutely the right time.
Yes, it is.
Going through this is now. I think we all need to have a respectful debate. And I definitely think we need to take this thing seriously. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that came up for me is, and I know that was a topic that we're going to talk about today, are the question over evictions, right?
Yeah.
And so last week, the North Dakota Supreme Court issued an order, basically saying we're not going to go forward with eviction cases, basically, for the interim, right?
They've suspended all. Yeah, they've suspended all evictions. So Minnesota as well,
right? So courts aren't supposed to make policy. I mean, generally courts can make like administrative decisions for courts. Like the North Dakota Supreme Court decides, how many judges were, or not necessarily how many, but they make sort of administrative decisions for the courts. But that's really sort of a policy decision. And the problem with courts making a policy decision is if you don't like something that the government's doing, what do you do? I mean, obviously you could go through legislative or whatever, but if you think the government's doing something illegal, what do? Well, you file a lawsuit. So if you think the court is doing something wrong, like if the court tells you we're not going to hear these types of cases right now, and you think that's wrong, what do? Do you file a lawsuit? And who hears the lawsuit?
Yeah, exactly.
The courts who made the decision, right? So good luck. So I mean, that was something that gave me pause. And again, I don't know that the state Supreme Court's wrong in the decision that they made, but I think that's an important thing to think about. Do we want courts making policy decisions like that? Because when the courts make the decision, the courts are also supposed to be the referees when it comes to whether or not policy is constitutional or legal. So, it creates...
Here's the argument or the push that's happening now. I mean, you're right. The courts made this decision. Should they be doing that? End of the day, what are you going to do? Take it to court and fight it? Good luck. But right now, in North Dakota, you're right. They're as of what we know, this came out, I believe, was it the 26th this decision came out?
It was last week.
It was something like, yeah. But they are
It
not
seems like
evictions.
a year ago, the way things are going.
Yeah,
So-
no kidding. Yeah, they're not doing evictions. You have Minnesota. Governor Walz last Monday cited order barring landlords from filing for eviction in court until the order is rescinded or until peacetime emergency that was declared is over. Tenants still out. However, you have to pay your rent. Now, I was just watching Governor Cuomo here a little while ago, and the topic came up with him too, and he said, look, you know what? Right now, you're not booting people out of your homes. You're not going to evict them right now. But he said, and he said it. He said, but when this is all over, whatever rents that you didn't pay, you got to pay those bills. You owe the people that own those buildings, those apartments. You owe them their money, and he's right. Now you have this rent strike 2020 that's going nationwide. It's attracted as of I think this morning just more than 8,000 followers on Facebook, and it's happening locally. There's been a couple articles written now by this CS. Is it Hagen? Hagen. Hagen works for the Forum, and he does a piece in here and talks to a few couples, and I feel for him, man.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, look, I lost my job. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. I get it, but there's this push that, and I threw it up on my Facebook page. And Rob, I got to tell you, I was surprised at the amount of people that don't feel people should have to pay their rent or mortgage right now.
Yeah.
But here's the problem, and you and I think actually agree on this one, is that look. And you spell it all out really well in the article, in the piece you did. You can find it at savingblog.com where you can respond to it, or go to inform.com. But, you got to look at this. Look, there are people that own these apartment buildings or the banks that hold these mortgages, and you spell it out. You got to keep in mind, these companies have their own responsibilities. They have payroll. They got bills to pay. They got employees to pay. They got vendors to pay. They got the government they got to pay, and that comes to taxes and everything else.
Yeah.
And where does this end?
They have banks. I mean, a lot of times the landlords don't necessarily own the property, right? They have it levered. They have a mortgage on it, right?
Yeah.
So the banks are going to want to get paid. And so that's always my question: is when people are saying, well, we shouldn't. People shouldn't have to pay their rent right now, or people shouldn't have to pay for this right now. Well, where do those dominoes stop falling? Because if you tell landlords, you're not going to get your revenue, or you're not going to get a significant chunk of your revenue, and then the landlords say, okay, well then I have to lay people off, right? I have maintenance workers, I have secretaries, I have people that I employ to maintain these properties and maintain my business, so I'm going to have to lay them off. Maybe I can't make my payments to the banks. Well, now the banks have a significant number of customers who aren't making their payments on their loans. Where does that end? And so, I mean, to me, I think we need to be very, very careful about waiving people's obligations. Is it maybe okay as policy? I like that Minnesota's pause on evictions came from the governor and not the courts. To the point that I was just making. I think if the governor makes the decisions, we still have the courts as the place we can go to act as referee for whether or not that's right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if the courts make the decision, it's like the quarterback making the pass and then deciding whether or not it was also a valid catch, right? I mean, you just can't have that. But anyway, I like the way they did it. But maybe that's good policy for the moment. But the thing we have to keep our eye on is if you use somebody's goods or services, you got to pay for them. Because one thing we're not doing, the grocery stores are still open. Food is no less a necessity than shelter.
Yeah, and what does that become? Now we don't have to pay for food anymore? I mean, where does this end?
Right. So you got to pay. I mean, that's part of our social contract. If you use somebody else's goods and services, you got to pay for them.
293-9000, toll-free, 1-888-970-9329. If you want to jump in on this, should people be allowed to stop paying their rent or mortgage for a while because of this coronavirus? Before I get to the phone calls here, and Ken, you'll be first on the phones, I just got this. This was sent to me about a half hour ago, and you have a group of nonprofits that have all gotten together, and they've written a letter to the governor of North Dakota, Governor Burgum, and they want a rent moratorium / freeze on foreclosures in North Dakota. What they want is no foreclosures for residential homeowners, no evictions for renters, no late fees for either, no reporting to credit agencies for failure to pay. And the people that belong to this group, let me go through. It is North Dakota Human Rights Coalition, the North Dakota AFL-CIO, North Dakota Farmers Union, North Dakota United, ACLU in North Dakota, High Plains Fair Housing Center, and the what's the last one on here? I believe it's the FM Coalition and Homeless. Look, times are tough. I don't want to see people lose their homes, but you gotta. There's got to be a stopping point where you go, look, look. If there's landlords out there that want to work with their tenants, fantastic. More power to them.
Right.
But again, that's
their choice.
Pay bills.
That's their choice making a decision to offer their goods on some sort of a reduced basis or to waive a fee or whatever. That should be their choice. They shouldn't be forced into that. I mean, really, and listen, I am sympathetic to people who lost their job. The problem with talking, because everybody wants talking about fairness right now, right? The problem is
it's not fair. This is not fair.
The virus isn't fair to anybody.
No, it's not.
There's nobody that this is being fair to. So this sucks for everybody. And so I really think that we've got to stay focused on people got to pay for what they're using eventually. And we got to allow, landlords to come to that on their own. I'm really struggling with the idea that we should just tell landlords that they have to continue offering their services with no guarantees that they're going to be paid in the future.
Yeah, they got bills to pay as well. To the phones, Ken Fargo, Jay Thomas Show.
Hey, Rob, I like the way you're thinking this out. Appreciate the questions. You keep doing you. I'm going to just offer maybe the way they're thinking about this is they're not making policy per se. They're just saying we're not going to take those cases into our courts at this time, which doesn't mean I didn't read it. You did. Maybe that means this can be actionable later.
Oh, it will be.
But they're just not going to do it now.
No, you're right. It will be
Yeah.
actionable later. But in the here and now, the courts are saying we're not going to do what is frankly their constitutional duty. They're not going to do it right now. And I think that if we're going to make
they'll do it down the road.
That to me is a policy decision. That's not an administrative decision, and that should come from somebody like the governor or the legislature, not the court. So that later on, if somebody
agree, I just think
So that later on, if somebody says, "Listen, I was damaged by this," or "This order was illegal," or whatever, you still have the courts where you could go to as the venue to say, okay, was this legal? Was this not legal? And sort that out. That's the court's job. That's why the judicial branch doesn't make policy. They're not supposed to. And in this case, I think they crossed the line.
Ken, appreciate the phone call. 293-9000. Williams on the road. You're up, Jay Thomas Show.
If you're getting an eviction letter or a foreclosure letter in your mail in the next 2 weeks, that's a process that's been going
for a while.
Beforehand.
Right.
I'm talking beforehand.
Yeah.
Beforehand. Okay. Before the COVID-19. If you were getting one, that's a process that's been in place for 6 to 8 months, especially on a foreclosure.
Yeah.
So it's not a COVID-19 issue. That's a you issue that happened.
Well, I hold on.
Landlords aren't going to come and evict you tomorrow or on Friday because you didn't pay your rent. They're going to give you a leeway, because I've missed my rent payments before, and of course I paid on my next check.
Yeah.
They never sent that eviction letter. You're evicted right away.
Well, I also believe, because I was in the property management business for quite a few years, and if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me right, you can't just be evicted on the spot. I mean, it is a process. It takes 30 days, 60 days. In Cass County, the sheriff here, and I believe Sheriff Empting, Minnesota, they are not serving eviction notices. They're not serving the paperwork. And you're right, William. Yeah. If you're getting one within the next week or two, then this is something that's been going on with you way before the whole coronavirus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
It's just
like what I posted on your website on your Facebook, Jay. Pay your food, pay your utilities, pay your housing, and pay your transportation.
Well,
the 4 walls of your life.
There you go, William. Appreciate it.
Don't pay the other things. Pay the 4 walls.
Appreciate the phone call. 293-9000 if you want to weigh into this. Real quick before I go to a break, Rob, I want to bring this up. And I have somebody from Job Service in North Dakota coming on here, the spokeswoman, because there's a lot of questions regarding how unemployment's working now. But in this article that was written by C.S. Hagen, one of the people he talked to, this Gabe Schwanke, 24, recently lost his job as a prep cook. But he's been stocking up on non-perishable food items, potatoes and rice for the last month. He applied for unemployment benefits for the first time. But the promised $148 a week won't be enough to cover his $535 monthly rent. All right, that sucks, but there's something missing in this story, Rob. Do you know what's missing in this story?
Well, it's the federal assistance.
The $600. The $600 a week you're going to get on top of the $148 you're getting from unemployment.
I would rather respond to this situation instead of telling businesses they can't charge for their goods or services. I would, and I say that, you know how much this, as a conservative, this makes me want to spit, but I would rather the government like just pay everybody's rent than to tell a landlord you can't, or to have some sort of a program say if you can't pay your rent, you apply for it and the government will pay your rent for a while during the duration of this very extreme situation we're in. I would rather have that policy than to tell landlords you can't evict somebody. Here's the other thing. What if the tenant's doing damage to the property? Right? What if they're in there and they're partying or they're getting water all over the place or whatever, and they're damaging your property? Are you going to be made whole? Letting somebody who's not respecting your property continue to live there maybe for months yet?
Who's picking up the coverage on that?
Yeah.
You know?
And by the way, I used to serve eviction notices actually at one point in my life. And it starts with a 3-day notice, at least when I did it. Maybe the laws have changed since then, but it starts with a 3-day notice of intention to evict, right? So that's usually you've missed a couple of rent payments. Now they're going to notice you. So I go out there, I serve you a notice. After that, if you don't respond to that, then typically what they would get is a summons and complaint. And then that begins sort of the district court process whereby, and that's usually you have 30 days to respond to that. So there's a whole process out that maybe and then the court maybe has to decide and they adjudicate it. And then if there,
it goes on,
and then if you lose, and then eventually the sheriff will come and move you out. But that process takes weeks, if not months, to get done.
All right. Oh, let me take a quick break here. We'll come back. 293-9000, toll-free, 1-888-970-9329. Those are the phone numbers for the program. Email us, talk@wday.com. There is a big push now, and it's not just here in North Dakota. It's around the country. The group is, Rent Strike 2020. In this rent strike, folks, honestly, do not get on board with this because you're just going to put yourself in a world of hurt down the road. They're calling for tenants to collectively refuse to pay rents during the pandemic. I'm telling you, don't go down that road because you're going to find you may think now, hey, at least I don't pay rent now. It's going to come back and bite you in the arse. It really will.
And also, if you can't pay, your rent,
William brought a great point.
Man,
if you're getting an eviction notice within the next couple days or a week or two, then something's been going on with you way before the whole coronavirus
also,
pandemic.
if you could pay your rent, pay your rent.
Should people be allowed to stop paying their rent or mortgage for a while because of coronavirus? You got a ton of nonprofits here in North Dakota that have got on board with this and have sent a letter to Governor Doug Burgum. They want to see this happen. Oh, what about the people that own these properties? They got bills to pay. Well, they should eat it now? I swear to God, Rob, we are going to tank this entire economy. I mean, just tank it into the ground.
If you can pay your rent, pay your rent. There's other people.
Right.
There's other workers who depend on that money too.
All right, 2:23. This is the Jay Thomas Show.
Overbearing panic attack entrenching my veins in an hour I'll be okay. I pray this pain will go away permanently someday.
All right, Rob Ford, just a couple minutes left here in the program. Or not the program, I should say. I got a couple hours left, but you and I got a couple minutes left. I don't know if you caught this story. Now, a listener just sent this to me, and it's just some of these people. I had a couple people come up to me today. I was at Stop to get gas this morning, essential. I needed the gas. And we're very upset because they had seen a couple big house parties going on this weekend. We're going to call the police. I'm like, well, you can call the police, but I really don't know what the police are going to do about it, if they're even going to even go out or not. I mean, people on news. And the reason I bring this up is this Tampa megachurch pastor. He's been arrested. He was leaving. He was warned multiple times, do not hold these services. It's dangerous. He was packing 500 people into his church. They arrested him.
So that's wrong. This is a tricky area of law because
it is.
The First Amendment, among the other rights, we usually talk about like freedom of speech and freedom of religion and all that. One of them is the freedom to assemble. That's a constitutional right. It's in the First Amendment. Your freedom to assemble. So it's a tricky thing, and a lot of times, like, because somebody actually sent me a question. I've been doing these mailbag columns now on Friday where people send in comments or whatever, and I respond to them. It's fun so far, by the way. rport@forumcom.com if you want to send yours in. Anyway, somebody asked, like, where does Governor Burgum's authority to shut down businesses come from? And that actually comes from the state constitution. He has the executive power, and then by statute, the legislature has given the governor declares an emergency. He has very broad powers to shut things like that down. And when it comes to businesses, if you think about it, most businesses are licensed by the government. So if you want to operate a business, you usually have to have one or more types of licenses. And essentially the government can pull your license or use their other different ordinances. There's a lot of strings that the government can pull when it comes to businesses.
Sure.
When it's a gathering in your private home, though,
that's tough.
That's a tough thing to do.
Tough.
That's a tough thing for the government to say. Because they can't. The government's going to tell you who you can and cannot have in your house. Yeah. No, listen. Please don't do that. Right?
No.
Please volunteer. Please volunteer to social distance because it's the right thing to do for our society.
Yeah.
But as far as what the government can do about it, not much. We're really depending on people choosing to do the right thing.
I'll tell you what's still driving me nuts, Rob. And I know the governor here is trying to address it somewhat. I see we're out of time, but man, we know that where the hot spots are in America. I mean, New York is right now. It's the epicenter of this. And Louisiana is getting bad. Why the hell are we allowing airplanes to leave that area? Nobody should be flying out of there. Shut those airports down. They had so many people out of the New York area flying down to Florida that now Florida's back having major problems down there.
You know, people
shut this garbage down.
People are asking me about like snowboards and stuff coming back to North Dakota. Which by the way includes my parents. Now, I think we're lucky that generally Arizona and New Mexico aren't any more of a hot spot. Those parts of the country aren't really anymore, depending on where you're coming from, aren't really any more of a hot spot than North Dakota is. I know North Dakota, a lot of people go to Arizona. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's a fair question. All I could say is I think our policymakers are doing their best to balance the danger that the virus is with the economic impact of our response from it. Government is a blunt instrument. I think people forget that a lot of times. It is not precise. When the government acts, there's a lot of side effects because it's just not an easy thing. So I don't know. I think we're going to have plenty of time when this is all over to point fingers after the fact. But I think our policymakers, Republican, Democrat, across the board, I think they're trying to do their best. And
Look! I heard something today. Matter of fact, Como when he was on, he had made this comment. I thought, dude, that even though I'm not a fan of that guy, I thought, wow, man, that was pretty cool. He said, look, this isn't Democrat, Republican. This is not red or blue anymore. This is red, white, and blue. This is America getting together. Yep. And stopping this thing. I'm like, you know what, Cuomo? Good for you. Good for you, buddy. All right, listen, Port. I have one quick question. I'll give you 2 seconds to answer it. Ask Rob how the Yankees will be this year.
Oh, man. I don't think we're having a season this year, honestly. That's where we're at. I am so my Sunday column is about, you don't have no idea how much I miss baseball right now.
Hey, what's coming up on the next Plain Talk?
I'm actually going to be talking about this issue, the rent thing. Dane DeCray from the ACLU is going to be on. He's one of the coalition that's asking for a moratorium on foreclosures and evictions. So we're going to be continuing this discussion on the podcast tomorrow.
All right, brother. Check that out. The world-famous Plain Talk podcast. Also, check out Rob's Works Anything.blog.com and Inforum Communications, all our newspapers. All right, brother. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, buddy. WDY time 2:33. What is going on with my unemployment? You want to know? You got that question? Well, we got Sarah Artenson. She is the spokeswoman for North Dakota Job Service. What about us in Minnesota, Jason? Well, come on. We're not a hammer. What are we? We're just nasty hammer. Look, I tried getting a hold of somebody over there. It's impossible. But I'm working on it. I'm working on getting somebody from the Minnesota side on. But if you're filing unemployment in North Dakota or possibly maybe doing it, we got answers to your questions coming up next. Jay Thomas Show.